It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by Ray White, the largest real estate and property group in Australasia.
And welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Podcast, available on iHeartRadio and also Spotify and Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast from. Well, finally, Friday has arrived, May the 27th for 2022. And this time last week, we were just a day out from the federal election. A lot has happened when you think about just how busy the PM Albanese has been. A week ago, he didn't know whether he'd be on a plane heading to the Quad meeting, let alone shaking Joe Biden's hand with photo opportunity. And of course, Josh Frydenberg was optimistic about the election and didn't see what was coming 24 hours later. And Peter Dutton, well, he certainly didn't know. So it has been a very busy week. Coming up, as always, we're going to be speaking with Rich Harvey and talking about this week what a buyer's agent is. And week in, week out, you've heard him talking about the property market, lots of analysis and stats and breakdowns. So this is going to be a very fertile subject to cover. But first, let's have a look at your weather around Australia.
It's the Main Centre forecast with propertybuyer.com.au.
And good morning to Sydney, expecting early fog with dry, cloudy conditions and a high of 21 degrees. Melbourne, possible morning showers and a high of 15. Brisbane, a wet day with 1 or 2 showers and 24 degrees is your forecast high. And in Perth, expect dry and cloudy conditions with a high of 24 degrees. And if you're a fan of the Martin Scorsese film Goodfellas, a film that was made back in 1990, 32 years ago, then you'll know who Ray Liotta was. Unfortunately, though, he died overnight aged 67. He was shooting a film called Dangerous Waters and was halfway through filming the movie. Not the first time an actor has died in the middle of shooting a film. It reminds me of Oliver Reed, who died on the Russell Crowe film The Gladiator. But sad news about Ray Liotta this morning.
Let's Talk Property, a podcast series with Rich Harvey.
Well, buying a home or investment property is typically the most expensive purchase a person will make in their lifetime. And buyers' agents have been around for over 2 decades in Australia. But does it make sense for you to get professional advice or to do it on your own? It's a great question, so we are going to break it all down with Rich Harvey, buyer's agent, CEO and founder of propertybuyer.com.au, to discuss the pros and the cons of using a buyer's agent. Good morning, Rich. Here we are again at the end of another busy week. It's been a busy one with a new change of government. How busy have you been?
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting week, Craig, with the change of government on the weekend. And as expected, the Labor Party's got in. They're still counting the votes to work out how much of a majority they've got and whether they're going to have the Greens and the Independents sitting on the crossbenches. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, we've noticed actually a little bit of a pickup in inquiry this week as a result. Hopefully it'll give the consumers and the economy a little bit of confidence and we can get on with business as usual.
Yeah, it's always nice to put that behind us. It's such a great question that we're looking at today. What is a buyer's agent? I guess the first question is, how long has Rich Harvey been a buyer's agent?
Well, I've been a buyer's agent for over 21 years. I started life as an economist and then switched across to being a buying agent. I started my business, 21 years ago when I saw that there was a real need in the community to help people make wise buying decisions. And I actually prefer the word buyer's advocate because that's what they're essentially called more in Melbourne than Sydney. But the word advocate means a layer of protection. We're there to protect the interests of the buyer in the real estate transaction. But the essential definition of a buyer's agent is simply a licensed real estate professional that represents the home buyer or the investor exclusively in the transaction. They don't get any kickbacks from agents. They get paid exclusively by the buyer. And by law, a real estate agent can't act for both a buyer and a seller in the same transactions. So it's very important that you use someone who's an independent and exclusive buyer agent if you're thinking of using someone.
Yeah, so the key being independent. So what does a buyer's agent do and how does the whole process come together? How does it work?
So what we do essentially, Craig, is take people through a 7-step process. First thing is understand their needs and desires. We create what's called a buyer's brief. We take their wish list, all their dreams and goals and their needs and wants, And we marry that down into a very clear buyer's brief and come up with a strategy for them. Then the second step is to give the client an understanding of what their money can buy and where they should buy. So we give them suburb profiles, we give them examples of properties that have recently transacted in their area. So they've got an idea of, like a benchmark report of what their money can buy. Then the third step, then the rubber hits the road. Then we actually get out there and start the searching process.
Yeah, and how does that work?
So Craig, what we do for searching is that we have extensive relationships with agents. We have probably 10,000 agents on our database. So we get the buyer's brief, we email that out to our agent database, and we get access to pre-listing, off-market properties, as well as all the properties that are naturally listed on the market. We go and do the inspection before we take the client out. And that way we get a real sense of, does it meet the brief or not? So we're saving the client a huge amount of time in that searching process. So we then come up with a shortlist, we present that to the client, take them out to have a look, or if they're interstate, we can do virtual tours for them. And then we get feedback from the client and get an idea of which one is best going to suit their budget and their preferences. Then we step into the next two phases, which is negotiation and due diligence.
Okay, and how do you negotiate?
Oh, we love negotiating, Craig. It's one of the best things about my job. I really, really enjoy it. It's not so much about beating the agents at their own game, because good agents know how to negotiate too. But the minute you walk into an open house, you're starting the negotiation process. So that agent is sizing you up to go, does this person have the budget? Do they have the experience? Because the selling agent is there to maximize the price. We're there as the buyer's agent to make sure we don't overpay and get it for the lowest possible price, but still beat the competition. So how do we negotiate? Well, we prepare firstly a very detailed appraisal report for our client, and we give them advice based on 5 or 6 comparable sales on what the property is actually worth. And so we go in armed with all the facts, and then we use those facts in our negotiation process with the agents. If it's an auction property, we'll try to buy the property pre-auction, but if we can't, we'll attend the auction on the client's behalf up to a pre-agreed limit. So we just take all of that emotion out of the process. You can imagine so many home buyers go, Rich, I have to have this property. And I say, look, just put the brakes on. We're going to get it, but just don't show all of your emotion to the agent. We just need to put a layer of protection around what you're looking to do here. Then we also organise the pest and building inspections. We help coordinate that, complete any other due diligence that might be required on the site, like neighbouring DAs or any zoning awareness or any covenants that we need to uncover. And then we facilitate the exchange of contracts. And then the last step is the pre-settlement inspection, which we attend before handover day, which is a very exciting day for our clients. So Craig, it's an end-to-end process. We help our clients create the brief, search for the right property, make sure they pay the right price, and then we're with them there right till the end when they move into the property.
And what is the advantage of using a buyer's agent?
Well, there's several benefits, Craig, for using a buyer's agent, and there are pros and cons. But the real advantage is, number one, getting independent advice. The buyer's agent's on your side. They're not getting paid by anyone else. They're on your side, so they're in your corner. Secondly, they give you confidence to make a good decision. A lot of people second guess themselves. They also save a lot of time. Most people on their own will take 6 to 12 months to buy a property, by which time the market might have moved up or sideways, or they just completely missed the market. We transact within about 30 to 60 days on average. Another one is negotiation that I mentioned before. Having someone between you and the agent, knowing the tricks of the trade, knowing what price to pay is really, really important. Another huge advantage is getting access to off-market properties. That's one thing that we're very, very good at because of our network of agents. And another thing is just the objectivity, being able to point the good and the bad out to the clients and giving them that real independent advice. It's really like using someone who's got that incredibly good knowledge and expertise to do the right work.
Well, we're up to that all-important question. Many people are going to be wanting to know, what is the cost of using a buyer's agent?
Great. Well, this, I guess, is one of the cons. One of the cons is, look, you've got to not so much give up control, but you've got to be accountable for your actions in choosing the right property. So a buyer's agent will keep you both honest and on track. That's not so much a con, but the con, I guess, is the cost. What does it cost? Well, we charge a fixed fee rather than a percentage of the price. But we have a scale of fees which ranges between 1.5% to 2%, but it's a fixed fee per price band. And the reason we do fixed fees, Craig, is we don't want there to be any perception of bias in the way we negotiate. So we charge between $3,000 to $5,000 upfront as an engagement fee, and then the balance of the fee is only payable once the contract goes unconditional. And we have a 6-month agreement. So we're generally very, very safe to buy a property, and we know we won't take on a client unless we can deliver within that time. And look, in this market, we're able to actually save a lot more than our fees. So it's a very clear advantage to using a buyer's agent in that regard.
Okay, and what sort of things should people be thinking about when selecting a good buyer's agent?
I think number one, Craig, is firstly they've got to be licensed in the state that they're operating in. So if you're buying in Queensland, you need someone who's licensed in Queensland. The second thing is they've got to have significant experience, not just 1 year's experience or just done some random course. They need to have significant experience. So all of my team have a full real estate license and been operating for many, many years. Secondly, they should be a member of the Real Estate Buyers Agent Association of Australia. So that's an association which has a strict code of ethics. I was the president of REBA for 4 years, and I volunteered my time over that period to improve the ethics and standards within the industry. Another thing the buyer's agent needs to have is extremely good connections. If you're going to get access to the right properties, you've got to have access to off markets. And that's a really, really important part. I think you've also got to know that you click with the buyer's agent. I drill into my team. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And for me, it's the care factor. It's having empathy and understanding of the client needs and being able to work with that. The other thing is that we have a team. We're not just an individual operator. We've got a team approach. So you've got a huge brains trust that's working for you right behind you at each step of the way.
And is there any unique features that you and your team bring to the table for those wanting to engage with a buyer's agent?
Yeah, Craig, there's a couple of unique features that my team bring to the table. Number one, I guess, I'm so proud that my team is the most awarded buyer's agents with 38 awards for excellence. So that just shows that we've had external validation for our services. But we really bring that depth of experience. Having bought over 3,500 properties in our 20-year history, that really shows that we know our stuff. But I think for most investors out there, they can be assured that we're investors ourselves. All of my team are active home buyers and investors, and we understand what the buyers have to go through. And that's what I mean by we have a brains trust. You can tap into all of that knowledge and experience and really get the best advice to make sure you make a good buying decision.
And I'm sure that over your career of 20 plus years of doing this, there's many anecdotal stories, some classic stories. Any come to mind?
Yeah, there's a couple of great stories. I've just helped a home buyer, Mike and Rebecca, buy their family home in the forest area on the Northern Beaches. They were moving from Sydney's Upper North Shore and they were really stressed out. They just didn't have the time. They were really worried they wouldn't be able to get into the market. It was actually through some of my social media posts that I got access to a property directly through a vendor. We'd been looking for about 3 or 4 months and finally this perfect property came up. And you wouldn't believe the joy on their faces. When they moved in, it was just like, oh, Rich, this ticks all the boxes. It's got the yard, it's got the pool, north facing. It was just fantastic. I recently just helped Peter, an investor. He's got fairly good borrowing capacity. We're helping him to buy 3 properties in 3 different states, and he's going to be well on his way to achieving his goal of 150K of passive income within about 6 to 7 years. One I did last year was probably the most memorable. Jen and Faye, we were helping a lovely couple and their mum move into, they needed a dual living property. So they needed a property where mum could live upstairs or downstairs and the other family could live in the other part of the house. And they were also selling their property. I managed to find a buyer to buy their property. So it meant that that owner didn't have to pay sales commission because I get paid on the buy side. And then I helped them to find their home. They were very, very emotional about the process there. Unfortunately, the dad was dying. It was a very traumatic time for them. A lot of hand-holding, a lot of tears throughout this whole process. I managed to find an off-market property, but it was during that time of the market, it was just so competitive. And even being off-market, this other agent that was selling it had also pitched it to a number of other buyers agents. So we ended up having quite a close negotiation to get it, but managed to close it out. I'd negotiate at all hours of the night. Like we literally work 24/7 sometimes, Craig. And I had this fantastic prestige home, but there was another Chinese buyer that I was competing against. And we just kept going backward and forward with offers. Ended up closing the deal at 12:30 a.m. in the morning. And I said to the agent, I said, I need this contract signed tonight. We went round to the vendor's house, got it signed, deal done.
Good stories, and thank you so much for demystifying this whole area about what a buyer's agent does.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks very much, mate.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.